Welcome to Cavan TV News and Views. First off, I'd like to say thanks to Sarah for the use of their gigabit broadband and to Positive Age for the use of the studio. We have a very important and interesting topic in the studio this evening. This evening I'm going to talk to Padraic Smyth, who is the manager of Cavan Monaghan Local Link. Good evening, Padraic.
Hi, Áine.
Okay, so Padraic, Local Link is a bus that we have seen now, I'd say in the last 2 years we see pretty prevalent around our towns. And it's new, and it does as it says on the tin, Local Link. So tell me how Local Link came about.
So, Local Link is what was formerly the Rural Transport Programme, which started in 2003 as pilots all around the country. By the time 2012 came along, it was a mainstream programme funded by the Department of Transport and managed by the National Transport Authority. Presently there are 15 Local Link offices around the country, a number of multiple counties like ourselves, Cavan Monaghan, you've one along for Westmeath, Roscommon for example as well. And as I say, it's now in its 16th year in operation. It's definitely more mainstream than it was, and since it's become under the management of the National Transport Authority. Formerly, I suppose in 2003, and in that 10-year period, if you like, from there, we mainly operated in very rural areas, 1 day a week type services, which we call demand responsive transport. And these are still in operation. This is pre-group transport, where people would phone up, see what service was in their area, where it could get them to. So in general, you're talking about from rural areas into main towns or villages. An awful lot of those would happen on a Friday. They were probably targeting people who they could go and get their pensions, that kind of thing. A lot of services that would link with social daycares. And this is right across the country, but I suppose we can only speak about Cavan Monaghan. We have about 70 of those 1 day a week type services in operation at present. From about 2015 onwards, we started to look at more what we call high frequency services that happen multiple times a day along a fixed route, operating to a fixed timetable, and maybe six or seven times a week. Presently, we would have 7 of those high frequency services operating across Cavan and Monaghan 6 days a week, so that's Monday to Saturday. And most of them would operate anywhere between 4, 6 and 8 times a day. And that's, I suppose, targeting not just elderly people, that's targeting right across the board, from students, people who are employed. Those services are operating with what we call a level of service that meets a greater need than just getting into town. This allows people to get to college, to get to work or employment or further education.
We were speaking earlier, Padraic, about the culture of using links or buses like that, and that, as you said, like bus was for like people going to bingo or whatever, things like that. But now we're trying to use the culture and say we're trying to cut down on our use of cars. We're trying to carpool. We're trying to do anything, but we're trying to save the planet here. And wouldn't it make much more sense if we all hopped on and off?
Yeah.
Local links, buses.
The buzzword nowadays is sustainability. And for, I suppose, yes, that means minimising
But
car use.
we're not using it, are we?
I suppose, well, there could be higher use of it, but what we're facing, I suppose, in rural Ireland is there's never been a bus culture. There's never been an availability of sufficient level of service that people have a genuine option. Well, I don't need to take the car, or I don't need to own a car, or certainly I don't need to own maybe a second car. We can survive with one car. And for that to happen, for that, I suppose, culture change to take place.
Okay, who's responsible for that culture change? Where does that lie?
Well, I think first and foremost, the service needs to be available to people. They need to have that option before they can make the decision. And certainly, I suppose what we would have noticed this year, and I'll give you an example. Each year now we run an initiative in July, Kids Go Free. Okay, and the numbers of young people, and that's under 18, using those high frequency services in July, because they're probably not working and they have this bit of freedom, but they're old enough to be able to travel independently. It's phenomenal, the number of young people that start to use that service. That's
and once they start,
culture.
they'll keep using it. They'll find it handy.
That's building the culture.
Yeah.
They're getting used to being able to depend on it, being able to rely on it, because it gets them where they need to go.
Okay, so looking at the service, and we talked about the different kind of buses that are using. You talk about the low floor vehicle, you know, that's very smooth with the path, and of course most of the buses are wheelchair accessible. They're all wheelchair accessible, so no problem there. And the low floor access, you know, happy for a mother and buggy to get in without too much pressure.
Yeah.
This all helps people to make people want to use the service.
Yeah, I suppose there's two things. Just touch back on the culture point as well, and it links into this. What has happened over the past couple of years and under the National Transport Authority is the brand Local Link. So it's now recognisable. There's ads on the radio, and all the buses are the same.
They're recognisable.
How that happens is when we develop a service, and we're assured of the funding for a new service and any of our existing services, we tender those out. And the winning contractor, part of the contract is they must logo up their vehicle. So
that's why they all look the same, except for the name of the owner.
Exactly. So the brand is very important,
recognisable.
And as I say, then comes the reliability of the services and having sufficient frequency of those services.
And of course, it's not an expensive service.
No, they're all subsidised, obviously. Fares are, I would say, relatively inexpensive, and especially for students or people who are regular users now, there's weekly options which are less expensive than buying a daily ticket as such. So you can buy a weekly ticket which will save you money, and that can cover you for 6 days, not just 5. So it's very much to encourage people to use that type of service. All the vehicles that are out there, with ourselves, are wheelchair accessible vehicles. And as you mentioned, the high frequency, and again this is part of the procurement process, when we decide what type of vehicle we need on a specific service.
Are they all petrol and diesel buses still?
At the minute they're all diesel, diesel buses. But we would specify for those high frequency services that they're low floor, so it makes it easy for people to walk on, walk off, unassisted. Driver doesn't have to help anybody, because even a wheelchair user can wheel themselves on and actually put themselves in position and pull the belt down across them, and they're safe and secure. So yeah, I mean, it's an important feature that people can use it as easily as that. You're probably aware, or you'll have seen, where the NTA have recently purchased some electric vehicles that are out on services in Dublin. We're probably a little bit away from that in rural Ireland at the moment. I suppose, notwithstanding the fact the infrastructure mightn't just be there yet either. And it will be interesting to see.
But if we could just get people into using buses there and then go electric.
The most important thing is for people to be using the services.
If you could have a service like you have in the big cities, hop on, hop off.
Yeah, I mean, you're standing at a bus stop in Dublin, the chances are there's going to go a bus past there every 10 or 15 minutes. We're not, are probably never going to reach that kind of level of frequency across Cavan and Monaghan. I mean, we have a service that runs from Cavan to Monaghan and vice versa. Ballyhaise, Butler's Bridge into Cavan. A little bit more than ever, not just quite on the hour every hour, but there's still 8 times a day. So if you're living in Ballyhaise, you've got 8 options to get in or out of town, and each one of those. All the services are going to get into, say, Cavan Town or Monaghan Town prior to 9 o'clock.
Do school children use your service?
Some, but it's not designed around school transport. They're using the service as an individual. And paying.
Just if it's handy,
Yeah.
Where do you see the future, or how talking about changing the culture, how soon of a change do you think? When will you start seeing a change?
I think we're already seeing, the numbers that we have using those high frequency services. I think are testament to the fact that there is a need, one, and two, that people will use bus services in rural areas if they're at a sufficient high level. The second thing, I suppose, is that, not just sustainability, but we're talking about CO2 emissions, things like that. That's one of the big targets for the government. The 2040 development plan talks about regenerating and revitalising rural communities. For that to happen, we need a very, very high level of public transport across rural Ireland.
But you see, that is the problem. We need that, but it's not viable financially for the private sector to do it. So it's always going to have to be subsidised by the government.
It's going to have to be subsidised, yeah. For it to be, it's not going to be viable. These are going to be, if they were commercially viable,
It would already be there.
They would be happening, but they're not. But that doesn't mean that they're actually not needed, and people won't use them if they are there.
I'm just thinking about the local link. Another good advantage of the local link is that the buses, they're short journeys, they're safe journeys. There's no amount of loitering on these journeys. People won't be using them like maybe you'd use the subway to ride the subway all day. There's nothing like that.
No,
it'll be a safe service for everybody to use.
They're there for a specific purpose, I suppose our longest journey would be the service that travels between Monaghan and Cavan, but that's a good journey, and it links, say, from Cavan, it's going via Ballyhaise, Scotshouse, Clones, Newbliss, Tremalhouse and into Monaghan town. You have people now travelling from Monaghan to go to college in Cavan. On that particular service, and vice versa. That wasn't possible 2 years ago, but we have 2,500 people a month using that service at the moment, which tells you that the need exists. Well, it'll never make it commercially viable, but as I say, that doesn't mean that it's not needed.
Excellent. So the future looks good for local link.
I think that it's now necessary. It's recognised in a lot of government papers that it's necessary and needs to be developed further.
When we were speaking earlier, you had a very good point there, that you said that many years ago when you became 18 or 17, when you got your driving licence, that was it. You bought the driving licence, you hopped into the car and you got insurance and you hopped off and you drove. That's not the way nowadays. Much more difficult.
Yeah, for 17, 18 now you apply for a provisional licence, but in terms of getting a vehicle, getting insured, it's very expensive, and not only that, you can't drive it on a provisional licence on your own. So I suppose from a financial perspective, for a young person to be able to get from Cavan to Monaghan or Monaghan to Cavan to go to college, they don't need a car now. And that's not just good for that young person, but also probably for the family as well.
Well, that's good stuff. Local link, the way to go, literally.
Your local bus service is the slogan.
And of course the bus, we even have a bus stop outside Cavan Monaghan Community Centre. There's a bus link stop.
Absolutely. Cavan town is quite well served now. There are 3 services in Cavan, in and around Cavan town, linking both, as I say, Ballyhaise, Butler's Bridge, Red Hills, Ballinya.
Yeah, we have it up on the screen there, you can see.
Yeah. They go all the way out to as far as Kilmore Roundabout and to the Farnham Hotel. 2 of those services link directly with Cavan General Hospital, as does the 176, which is coming across from Monaghan. We have another good service that comes in from Killashandra 4 times a day as well. So yeah, it's pretty well served at the moment. That's not to say that we're not looking at other areas that do need services, and that is the plan. But every plan is subject to funding. We have to build a good business case. To
the Department of Transport. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I suppose we've been quite successful in terms of what we've put forward so far to date. Has shown to be needed, and there's good numbers on them. We'll take more, obviously. But that's what it takes. It takes a while to build that business case. There's a lot of scoping out to be done, and then you've got to look for the funding. But please God, next year we'll get some more.
Well, good work on behalf of Local Link, getting the community connected and keeping us all moving around. Good service. And thanks for the work you do in the neighbourhoods. And folks, and remember to use it. Use your Local Link. Get into using a bus. Much safer, less bother parking, less bother of driving the car in the dirty weather and parking and in town and parking fees and everything in town. Hop on your bus, isn't that right?
That's exactly
and use Local Link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks very much, Padraic, for talking to us on Cavan TV News and Views. Thank you.